One of the things that you definitely want to avoid in your solos is that your lines sound like scales to the chord progression. You don't want to play melodies that are that predictable and that just sound like stepwise motion. That's for an exercise, not really something you want to have in your solo. In this video, I'm going to show you some examples of how the people that I've checked out, and we're talking from all the way back to Parker and up to people like Allan Holdsworth and Michael Brecker, try to break up their lines and how they use some really great ideas with larger intervals and other ideas to change the flow, and in that way create some more interesting lines. My name is Jens Larsen. If you want to learn jazz and make music, then subscribe to my channel and click the little bell notification icon so you don't miss anything. This is from Charlie Parker's solo on Dexterity, which is actually a great rhythm changes theme to check out if you want to play a rhythm change that's not too fast, so that you can really start working on nailing all the changes, which is also what Charlie Parker is in fact doing here. On the B flat major 7, he just starts with a scale run, so, and then he's coming down from the C to the B, so the third of the G7, again just being really clear in the changes, and then really what the melody does is it just continues. So we kind of have a long scale melody, which is something that you have really often in bebop. In bebop there is just in the style a lot of scale melodies happening, but they also have some really creative ways of working with that. And that's what he does here. Because when he gets to the B, he skips up an octave. Instead of going to the next note down here in the C harmonic minor scale, he goes up an octave and plays this one. So we get this, which sounds a lot more interesting. And then just runs down the scale down to the E flat on the C minor 7. On the C minor 7, he's adding another type of octave displacement, because one of the arpeggios you can use on a C minor 7 is of course the one from the third. That's an E flat major 7. And he's coming out on the E flat, but he doesn't play. He plays this one, and then he goes down an octave and plays the rest ascending. This is sometimes referred to as the Honeysuckle Rose lick, because of this melody. But that's that idea. So. And that's really sort of a trademark bebop phrase that you definitely want to have in your playing. And also you will hear people like Grant Green use it all the time. So does Joe Spencer. Another great way to get some larger intervals into your solos and break up the lines a bit is to practice some arpeggio structures or interval structures that have larger intervals in them. And that's what this Mike Moreno example is a great example of. Here he's using Shell-Voicings as an arpeggio. So in this case he's playing on A minor, D7 back to G major from Out of Nowhere, which is a song in G major. And he's starting with the Shell-Voicing found on the third of the A minor chord, so there's a C major 7 Shell-Voicing. And Shell-Voicings are kind of easy to play, and you also already know them quite well, because it's quite likely that you can play the C major 7 arpeggio and then you just need to leave out one note. Then you have the Shell-Voicing. And then he continues and makes the line even more moving in terms of the range, and making the range a lot bigger by using a G flat or F sharp major 7 Shell-Voicing as well. So he has two Shell-Voicings next to each other. And that's really giving us sort of a D7 alt or D7 sharp 9 sound. Then from here he changes the top note and then plays the same arpeggio again, and then we actually have an E flat minor triad, and then resolves that to a G major triad, and then ends on the 9. And here he's actually resolving to G major within the D7 also, so he's really moving the bar line a little bit. But that's also a great way to create some other kinds of tension. Lage Lund uses a lot of spread or open voice triads in his solo playing, and that is a great way to add some larger intervals to your solo lines. It can be a little bit difficult to handle because you really have a large range within 3 notes, so they can be difficult to use, but he does this really well, and it's also definitely worth checking out. In this case he's playing on an E flat minor chord. It's actually on Green Dolphin Street, and he's playing a G flat major triad, but then as a first inversion spread triad. That means that we have a B flat, G flat and a D flat, and we get first a flat 6 and then a 5th. From here he just continues with moving up and playing something that's kind of like a pentatonic melody, and then a flat 6, and then ending on the root of the E flat minor chord. This Michael Brecker line is really a great example of how you can take small building blocks and then put them together, and in that way create an interesting double time line with a fairly large range. So this is definitely constructed by just putting together different arpeggios. It's not that far away from what Mike Moreno was doing in the previous example that I went over, but at the same time, because there's a larger range and there are a lot more notes, you kind of have to have these different building blocks and also these different colors, because otherwise it's just going to get boring. So if we just take this line apart, the first part is really just an A7. So it's kind of like he's playing an A7 to go to the D minor that the whole thing is on. Then we get a D minor triad. And here you also see that when he moves on to a G major triad, the intervals are actually kind of created when he's going to the next arpeggio. And that's just because he's just putting these ascending arpeggios next to each other, and it's as much about just having small melodies that move in one direction and then several of those next to each other as it is about having one long statement. And then he gets into an F major 7 arpeggio, ending up on the 9 here. So the idea here is first to just really play, he almost plays like a small chord progression in here, because he first plays A7, D minor, and then you could say that the next part is an E minor chord, that's the G major triad, and then an F major 7 turning into be an F major 7, 9 on the top note. The reason that I can keep on publishing videos every week is that there is a community of people over on Patreon that are supporting the channel. I'm very grateful for their help, and if you join us over on Patreon, I can also give you something in return for your support. Allan Holdsworth is another improviser that I think is really great at improvising lines that are sort of long, dense lines with lots of notes and that are kind of fast. But if you were to slow them down and just look at the individual melodies, then they're still pretty strong and they still sound good. And that's not always the case when you check out faster lines. So in this case, he's improvising on a D flat major 7 chord, and the song is in A flat major. And the first part of it, and the way that he's really introducing some other intervals here, is that he's playing a quartal arpeggio. He's doing that from F, so he's playing this one, which fits really well with the D flat major 7 sound, because we're getting the 3rd, the 13th, the 9th, and the 5th. And then he goes into just a straight D flat major 7 arpeggio, adding the 6, and then ending on the D flat on the D flat minor chord here. If you want to check out some more information on different arpeggios and different structures with larger intervals, then maybe check out this video where I'm going over some different types of arpeggios. They're all 3-note arpeggios. They're fairly easy to play, but they have a completely different sound and they're well worth checking out and getting into your playing. That's about it for this time. Thank you for watching, and until next time.